guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing really well. It is 2 weeks postpartum. I actually cannot believe it. I can't believe that I'm sat here today talking to you with a 2-week-old. Before we start, I just wanted to introduce you to baby Hallie. Here you go. She's asleep. There's her. She is actually the spitting image of George when he was born. But she's got much darker hair. And I really hope that stays, because George's hair is literally the same colour as mine. And Hallie's is the same colour as her dad's. That would be cute if that stayed, but I'm going to pop her back down and let her finish her slumber. So the last time I was speaking to you, I was pregnant, and now I am 2 weeks postpartum and have a newborn, and it's like she was never not here. So I wanted to do a Q&A, newborn Q&A with you. I did one of these with George as one of my first videos after I gave birth with George, so I thought I'd do one with Hallie as well about my experience this time. All the questions that you guys have had over on Instagram, we've been talking in DMs and stuff loads, but I have so many messages in there, and I'm not gonna lie, a newborn plus a toddler don't have much time to be replying to DMs as much as I would love to. I certainly had way more time at this point when I was doing this first time round, when I just had a newborn, because they sleep a lot. And yeah, toddlers don't. So yes, I am currently filming this when George is at nursery. He's still at nursery a little bit, so we have a little bit of respite and a little bit of time to do some newborn snuggles. Hallie is sort of asleep, sort of not. So we're gonna see how far we get, and we might do some baby carrying, we might do some breastfeeding, who knows, whatever she needs we might do. But yeah, I wanted to do this video with you guys, and yeah, I've got all the questions here, and let's just get into it. I do just want to start off this video just by saying that I am extremely tired. My words will be jumbled, I might not make sense in some sentences, and it might take me a really long time to get out my point, but bear with me, I'm just a little bit sleep deprived, that's all. I've separated the questions into little categories, so I'll try and timestamp them down below, and you can skip to bits if you want answer to a specific question or something. But let's just get into it. So the first load of questions are about birth and postpartum recovery and that kind of stuff. So the first question was, how was birth and did you tear? This was one of the most asked questions, and I feel you. So how was birth? My birth experience was everything that I could have wished for. Personally, it was probably the best experience of my life, and that's including my birth with George. Of course, my birth with George was a magical day and such an amazing experience doing it the first time and everything, but I genuinely feel second time round, I knew what I was going into, I knew what my body did last time. I know there's no guarantee that will happen again, obviously, but I was just a lot more confident. I knew what to expect, I knew what the pain was going to be, and I knew, what my options were, and I felt very informed, and I knew what was available to me in a way that I just didn't last time. Yeah, so I genuinely had a really amazing experience. If you want to see a little bit more about what the lead up to my birth was and everything like that, then I have my birth vlog / birth story on my channel already. I was induced, and that was another question, was I induced in the end? I was induced, but I was able to go into active labour without having my waters broken or the oxytocin drip, so I only had the prostaglandin gel, and then I went into active labour on my own, and that meant that I could go to the birth centre, have a water birth, and it was just the best experience ever from then. Even the induction, to be honest, I actually quite enjoyed being in hospital already before being in active labour, just because it takes the element of stress out of it. For me, being in labour at home with a toddler just wasn't really gonna be fun for me. So yeah, I just loved it. I loved every moment of it, minus the ring of fire, but even at that point, you're so close to meeting your baby that there's obviously an element of enjoyment even though you're in significant pain. I hope that makes sense. Anyone that's given birth, I think, will probably get that. But yeah, overall, I really cannot complain at all. Oh, the other part of that question was, did you tear? And no, I didn't tear with Hallie, which is mad because she was almost 2 pounds heavier than George was, and I tore with George. But I think that's just a second time mum thing. Your body has done it already. Your body has done that movement. I love that. Your body's done that movement before, it's stretched that way before, and so it probably just knows what it's doing. It's just like muscle memory, right? Like it just knows what it's doing. I don't really know. I feel like there's probably some research behind it that I have not done. But yeah, with George, yeah, he was £6 6 ounces, and I tore with him, only minor like tears, but I think that was more to do with the fact that I didn't like the way that I was pushing, and I like I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just like, you know, going for it. Whereas this time I knew how to push, and my midwife, I have to say, this time around was very, very good at guiding me, like with how to push and like how to steady my breathing, so that I was putting all of my energy into that. And yeah, she was just so good. So I definitely feel that helped as well. But yeah, I didn't tear with Hallie. And there was another question about how much did Hallie weigh, and like I said, she was almost £2 heavier than George. So George was £6 6 ounces, and Hallie was £8 3 ounces. Yeah, the difference when they were first born was significant. However, she's still a tiny little dot to me. Like, it's crazy. I go from picking up Hallie then to pick up George, and I'm like trying to support George's head, and I'm like, wait, no, you're almost 3. There's no, I don't need to do that. And it's just crazy, the weight difference. The next one was about postpartum recovery. So how has recovery been so far? This might be a little bit TMI for some people, so feel free to skip to the next part if you don't want to hear about the gory details. But I have to say, all jokes aside, my recovery this time has been bliss in comparison, again, to my first. I don't know whether it is just a crack on, get on with it attitude that you kind of have to have when you've got another one like in tow already, or it's a second time mum thing in terms of your body knows what it's doing in terms of like the recovery, and it's, you know, whatever, or just the birth experience that you've had, or literally a combination of all of those things, or none of those things. I don't really know, but yeah, the recovery's been a lot easier this time so far. Like, I'm, you know, 2 weeks postpartum, I'm definitely not recovered, but yeah, I'm still bleeding lightly, but I feel like with George I bled for like maybe 3 weeks. I can't remember, but it was a lot heavier for a lot longer, whereas this past week it's been a lot lighter for me. So yeah, I'm 2 weeks postpartum. I bled really heavily, and then not so heavily, and then on days where I do a lot of cluster feeding, or on days where I am very active, I bleed a lot more, and I think that's quite normal. In terms of like how sore it is and stuff, I would say the first week was very sore, same as it was before, and, you know, going to the toilet and stuff like that was a bit of a struggle, but I feel like that's really normal. And then this week it's been far less sore. That's all I can say really. Like, I'm almost back to normal in terms of the sensitivity, I would say, which is amazing, because I certainly wasn't at that point with George at 2 weeks postpartum. But I feel like I still have to remind myself of like my limits, because like even making the bed and like playing with George on the floor, or like sitting down on like harder surfaces for long periods of time, or like sitting in positions where, like, if I'm playing on the floor with George with my legs up like this, and then I'm like putting pressure in an area that's obviously just gone through a bit of a traumatic experience, like getting back up and stuff, I'm like, oh yes, that happened not very long ago, so I need to be careful. But yeah, like I say, like, you kind of just have to crack on and do things when you've got a toddler in tow already. You just do. I know that I need to give myself grace, and I certainly, when George is not here, or, you know, he's playing with daddy or something like that, I'm definitely like laying on the sofa having those newborn snuggles and not doing much at all. But on the days that I am doing more, yeah, I can definitely notice a difference in the recovery element of it. So yeah, I feel like that's probably sums it up. Haven't really gone into the gory details. I feel like I probably shouldn't put those kind of things on the internet. However, I will just say about going for number 2 for the first time. I'm joking, it wasn't too bad, but it's definitely not the most pleasant experience at all. Wees, however, have been pretty fine, like pretty much from the get-go. I did have the perineal like spray bottle thing, which you just put warm water in and then like dilute your wee. However, I needed to give the midwives a wee sample, and it had to be undiluted, so I had to do my first wee like without that, and that wasn't very nice. But since then I had been using the like perineal water thing. I have also graduated from using baby wipes every single time to using toilet roll most of the time. So there's a little bit of information that you didn't ask for. Then moving on to probably the most asked about section, which is like the transition between 1 to 2. How is George coping? All of those kind of things. So like being a mum of 2, how is it? The first question in this category is, how is Hallie sleeping and does she wake George, and how do you manage that? So Hallie's sleeping, I think, really well for a newborn. So she wakes up probably twice in the night at the moment, which is pretty good going, I think. I feel like it's manageable. I mean, you have to manage it, but I feel like it's okay. And like I say, we've got 2 of us here at the moment, which won't be the case from today. So tonight is actually going to be my first night, just me. Because yeah, if you guys are followers and like subscribers to my channel and stuff, my husband works away during the week, which is going to be fun. I'm a bit scared about that. Yes, she wakes up a couple times in the night, and she has occasionally woke George up. Sometimes George is already in our bed by that point because he's either wet his bed because we're in the throes of potty training as well, or he'll wake up because Hallie's crying and come into our bed at that point. It just depends, and some nights he hasn't come into our bed, but when he does, I kind of love it, I'm not going to lie. Like, having us all in the bed, plus our new addition, like, I do love it. I'm sure the novelty will wear off at some point, but yeah, like, he doesn't seem to really mind in the night at all. It's in the mornings when I'm absolutely knackered and he wants me to get up at 6 o'clock and I'm feeding Hallie. There's a bit of a power struggle going on between the kids, I'm not gonna lie. So obviously I'm feeding Hallie, I'm shattered because I've been up in the night, and then George is like screaming at me because he wants to go downstairs and watch telly, or he wants some toast or something. Like, he just screams at me in the morning, and I just I'm like, what have I done to deserve this? If you just sat here, like, go on my phone or go on your iPad or something, he just won't. So that's fun. But generally Hallie is sleeping really well, I think, for a newborn, for a 2-week-old. And George doesn't really wake up in the night, but yeah, in the mornings it's just a bit of a struggle. The next one again is, how are you dealing with sleep deprivation and having the patience with a toddler? And this is such a real question, because that is for me 100% the biggest challenge so far, 2 weeks in, of having 2. So the sleep deprivation part of it on its own, not a big deal. Like, you just crack on, you deal with it, you have naps when you can, etc. However, having the patience with a very unreasonable toddler, when you are feeling that sleep deprived and you just don't have the patience, is really, really difficult. And there have been several occasions where I've lost my patience, or I say lost my patience, like, I've dealt with a situation in a way that I wouldn't normally like to deal with a situation, and regretted it, like, instantly, like shouting or sort of being a bit more firm with George than I normally would be. Rather than explaining something to him, I've sort of shouted or told him no, or, you know, put him on the naughty step. These are all things that, like, you definitely have to do occasionally with toddlers, but I feel like I've done them more often than I normally would, and been a bit harsher with him, probably, and I feel very guilty for it almost instantly. And I tell him that I'm sorry, and I tell him that I'm tired, and I feel like we're getting at the point in his, like, development where he kind of gets it, he knows, but he also feels like that, and he's also tired, and he's also a toddler that's trying to deal with things. And I'm just like, I'm trying to give myself some grace, because at the end of the day, I'm only human, and I'm very tired, and I'm very emotional, and I'm hormonal. All of these things don't bode well when you put them all together. But yeah, like, definitely it's a tricky one, I'm not gonna lie. Another question is, what are your tips for managing a newborn and a toddler? And to be honest, I'd love some tips myself, but the things that genuinely have worked, and when I do have the patience and I really do put that time in, really, really work, is not, like, so obviously George is, like, obsessed with Hallie, like, obsessed with her, and wants to touch her all the time, wants to carry her, wants to hold her, also doesn't want me to just be holding her and not be playing with him. So, like, my biggest tip would be to, like, actually let him be involved, and if he does something that you don't really want him to do, like touching her face too much, or trying to, like, be a bit, you know, rough with her. Like he wants to rock her, but he rocks her like this, like really tough, and you know, just basically repeating the same thing over and over again, saying to him that she's really small and she's fragile and she could like break really easily. Like I'm using words that he already knows to like explain why he has to act a certain way around her, and also like letting him do things. So like actually letting him like hold her, like obviously on a pillow, like with very much like me there, and he only wants to do it for like 30 seconds and he's bored. So but actually if I didn't let him do that, he'd be like fuming and like really throwing a tantrum and feeling left out probably. So like actually letting him do stuff. Equally when she's sleeping or when she doesn't need me, I'm like fully on George, like very much like, let's build a tower, let's do this together. George, can I have a cuddle? He never, before Hallie came, never wanted to cuddle me, like ever. If I asked for a cuddle, he'd be like, no, like, and just run off and do something. And now he really, really wants cuddles, like, not for long. Like again, he's like got a very short attention span, but he'll, if I say, oh George, I want a cuddle, I miss George, and he's like, oh, miss me, and I'm like, yeah, and then comes and gives me a cuddle for a second and then runs off and builds a tower on his own and whatever. But actually now when I am available for him, I'm really, really present in it. I'm sure there are going to be days where that is not the case, and it's again only 2 weeks in, but yeah, I kind of feel like those are my biggest 2 tips. I haven't done any solo trips out yet with both of them. I'm sure there's a lot of things to manage when it comes to that, but yeah, we'll get there. We'll see. We'll manage that when we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And then the last question on this category was 0 to 1 or 1 to 2, which is harder. And I'd say they're both really hard in completely different ways. So 0 to 1 obviously literally rocks your entire world. Everything is brand new. You don't know anything, and if you're anything like me, you're paranoid about most things and you want to control everything and you want to be like really rigid with the routine and make sure that you're doing everything correctly, so you're not making a rod for your own back, or you're not like, oh, I don't know, there's just so many things that comes with going from 0 to 1. Like your literal entire life turns upside down. You've never been responsible for anyone else in your entire life other than yourself, and then you go from that to literally being this little creature's only hope of survival, and it's just a lot. That is difficult. I would have to say though, for me, going from 1 to 2 is certainly harder, just because I really loved the newborn stage of like 0 to 1, going from having 0 to 1 babies. I really loved, and I loved the newborn stage of having, you know, 1 to 2, absolutely. But I loved like being all consumed by a newborn. Like I loved it, and I know not everyone does, and that's not everyone's experience at all. I just loved that, and therefore it wasn't hard for me. I don't know if that's a really like weird thing to say. Like I didn't find it difficult having a newborn when you just had one. Going from 1 to 2, however, having a toddler on top of a newborn is hard. It's really hard. So far I'm finding it very difficult, and my husband is here. He's going back to work today. He's back at work today, and I'm scared. I'm not gonna lie. My mum's actually coming up this week for the week, so she's going to be here staying with us, which I'm really, really grateful for. She's on her way up now, but after that I'm really, really petrified. I can't lie. I know that it'll be fine. Of course it'll be fine. We'll manage, right? But I'm scared. George is difficult most of the time, like before Hallie was even here, and I worry about like the cluster feeding during bedtime. Bedtime's a nightmare in our house anyway. Like it really is. George does not like bedtime. The summer can F off, frankly, because it can't. I don't want the summer to F off. I love the summer, but it's the light nights do him in. Like he just doesn't want to go to sleep. He's not tired. We give him a nap and then he doesn't sleep, or we don't give him a nap and he's asleep by 5 o'clock and then he wakes up at 10 o'clock. It's just exhausting. And like when he's awake, he's not just there awake like watching TV or just chilling. He's awake screaming, shouting, like it actually gives me a headache, and it's exhausting. That alongside cluster feeding, you know, trying to comfort Hallie, just being tired, frankly, because I'm up in the night as well. I want some sort of time to myself. I say to myself, like chilling with Hallie, or I don't know, just sitting down, scrolling through my phone, if I'm frankly honest. Like, I just want a little bit of time. Yeah, it's gonna be a struggle, I'm not gonna lie. And that is my honest opinion about going from 1 to 2 so far. Really sorry if that scared anyone. But yeah, we'll get there, we'll go through it together. And I feel like you guys are gonna be my support network in this because the next load of questions are about breastfeeding / bottle feeding and what we're doing and all that jazz. So let's just get into it. The first question was, why did you choose to breastfeed this time rather than bottle feed? So a little bit of background, if you guys don't know, I exclusively bottle fed my firstborn, just from the get-go, never even thought about breastfeeding. And I think probably there was just a mixture of reasons for that. Like, no one I knew really breastfed. I'd always read that bottle-fed babies sleep longer, and I was obsessed with that. I was obsessed with nailing sleep, like, from the get-go. I also liked the idea that I knew exactly how much my baby was going to be eating, making sure that they, like, had enough food in their system or milk in their system, like, at all times. I was very, like, obsessed with that as well, and I feel like all of those things just come into the fact that I was quite a control freak of a first-time mum. Like, I am willing to accept that is the case. And yeah, so that was like why I bottle fed probably first time around, plus breastfeeding just scared me a little bit, to be honest. And then this time around I wanted to give it a go. I just wanted to give it a go because I feel like I did bottle feeding and I know how to do that, and I was always more than happy to do that again if breastfeeding didn't work, or like it just doesn't like fit into our routine very well or anything like that. And that's still very much gonna be the case if breastfeeding doesn't work for us. Again, we're only 2 weeks in and reality still hasn't really hit yet. Like I said, husband's going away and I'm really scared. So yeah, if bottle feeding turns out to be how I end up surviving being a mum of 2 on my own for a little bit, then so be it. But yeah, I just decided to give breastfeeding a go this time, really. Like, I know all the benefits of it, like the health benefits and everything. Another question was, do you regret not breastfeeding with George? And absolutely not. I don't regret it at all, and I don't feel any guilt or anything like that about breastfeeding Hallie and not having breastfed George. Like, I genuinely don't at all. I don't think it's that deep. I really don't. I bottle fed George because it's what I felt comfortable doing at the time when George was born. The next one is, what would you say the pros and cons of both breastfeeding and bottle feeding are? Which I think is a really good question. So obviously we all know like the health benefits and all of that kind of stuff of breastfeeding and formula and all that kind of stuff. I'm not even going to go into that. But in terms of like the practicalities, like the pros and cons for me, my main ones I guess for bottle feeding, the pros are definitely that you can share the load. You are not always the person that is feeding your baby. Your partner can do it, your parents can do it, anyone else that is around visiting or whatever can feed the baby. Definite pro. Pro also is you know exactly how much they're taking, which I liked. Definitely first time round. You know how much they're drinking, and that's definitely a benefit for a lot of people. I think the biggest one is certainly that it's not, if you are formula feeding, then it's not all on you, like in your body, and there's just a lot of pressure and time constraints on yourself if you are breastfeeding. That's the main con, I would say, of breastfeeding, and the main pro of bottle feeding. Flip side, obviously the cons of that are you've got to sterilise bottles, which is ag. I mean, it's not that like bad when you get into like a little routine of it, but sterilising bottles is annoying. Making bottles in the middle of the night, not fun when you are knackered. And I guess like making up formula and doing it on the go, and like making sure that it's all sterile and the right temperature and all that stuff. So they're probably the cons. So not massive cons really. Like, I think formula feeding and bottle feeding is fine and great, and like however your baby is fed. Like, I don't, yeah, there are no like massive cons. With breastfeeding, the main benefit to me is the ease of access. It's very quick. Like, if your baby is crying because they're hungry, feed them. Whack out a boob, feed them, done. And I don't know, like, obviously I'm only 2 weeks in, like, I know that there's a long road ahead of us, and I don't know whether I will stick it out completely forever. I'll try, but yeah, we'll just see how things go. But yeah, like, I was just really worried about all of that. Like, I just really didn't want cracked nipples, and I really didn't want, like, just her to not be full and like content and not be able to provide her that. There's definitely a bit of an emotional thing that goes with breastfeeding that just you don't get with bottle feeding, and I'd say that's actually a bit of a con for me. Like, the emotional side of it it's just a lot of pressure that you don't need when you're already that hormonal. And just feeling like you can't do something, or like you failed. And I've never ever felt like that with bottle feeding, ever. And with breastfeeding, I've already felt like that a little bit when she's not, like, she's not satisfied or she's not hungry, and then like there's nothing left there, and like my supply wasn't very good for a couple of days and all that kind of stuff, and we supplemented it a bit with formula. And I haven't even mentioned that with breastfeeding and formula feeding, so like combi feeding sort of, definitely primarily breastfeeding, but my husband's been giving her a bottle at the last feed before he goes to bed. He'll give her a bottle of formula, because I'm already in bed by then, give her a bottle of formula, and then I will pump before I go to bed, and then, but the rest of the time, breastfeed. Sorry. So I think we basically just overdid it slightly with how much formula we were giving her, and then my supply went down the following day or a couple of days, and then she was really not content, and then we were like, oh, I'll just fill her up with some formula again. But then obviously that has a knock-on effect for your supply, and it's a bit of a juggling act when you're combi feeding, I'm not gonna lie. So I think now I'm into a routine of pumping whilst my husband gives her a bottle. Actually my supply is like, it's in a good cycle now. Like, it knows how much to produce, like how much milk to produce. And I also have a stash now in the freezer of some breast milk, so we won't have to do formula all the time, because like my stash is like, it's got to a point where it's all good. Like I said, my husband's going to be working away again for the next couple of months, so actually I'm probably just going to be breastfeeding unless it's on the weekends, and then he'll do like a bottle, but that'll probably be breast milk from now on anyway, because I've got my supply back up. That leads me to my next question, which was, how does pumping fit into your schedule, and like when did you start pumping and all that kind of stuff? Why did you start pumping so early, etc. When she was drinking the formula, I would pump, or at least like slightly before I went to bed, I would pump, and then my body would still know to produce that milk and not like drop in my supply. So when she was having formula, I was pumping, so that I knew that my body was still going to produce that milk for when we don't have the formula, and I can just breastfeed her. Hope that makes sense. Basically with breastfeeding, it's all supply and demand, isn't it? So if you don't feed them like for one feed, then your like body's not going to produce that milk for the next feed. Does that make sense? Like, I think I'm probably not explaining it very well at all. Again, very, very tired. But basically, I am just pumping when my husband was giving her formula. The reason that we decided to like do that combi feeding thing is just so that I could go to bed early, and so that I could get up in the night to breastfeed her. And yeah, the reason it was formula is because I didn't have my milk supply in at that point. Now, however, because I've been pumping like once a day, I've got a bit of a stash in the freezer of breast milk, so we'll probably just use that when the formula runs out. And then we'll get into like a new cycle, because like I said, my other half is going back to work, working away, so I'm going to be doing all the feeding anyway, so I probably won't be supplementing with formula. But when he's back on the weekends, like probably we'll get back into that. He'll do the last feed so that I can go to bed early, I can get up in the night, etc. I think. I hope that answers some of your questions on bottle feeding, combi feeding, all that stuff. I might talk about it a little bit more in vlogs and things like that, but I feel like there's just so much to talk about. I feel like I'm not going to be explaining it very well because of my current state of mind and lack of sleep. The next question was, what are your newborn essentials so far? I'm just going to rattle through these, and I'm going to link them all down in the description box, all Amazon links and stuff. But yeah, I'll pop them all down there if you want to look at them in more detail. My first one is in the sleep category, which is my Love to Dream swaddle. I love that. Hallie's using George's old one, and it's just an absolute winner. The Penguin Nightlight, which you might be able to see in the background there, it's the Tommy Tippy one, love it. For feeding, the Hacker breast pump, that's also in the background actually. Hacker breast pump, brilliant invention, love that thing. Mam bottles, for if you are expressing or bottle feeding, Mam bottles all the way, don't even bother with any others, frankly, in my opinion. If you're bottle feeding, the Tommy Tippy prep machine, winner, absolute winner. And then also the Tommy Tippy cold water sterilizer. I just think it's so much easier than just anything, basically. Then we've got the Baby Zen Yo-Yo stroller with the bassinet attachment. Hallie's using George's old one, and I just love it so much. It's so lightweight, it's so easy. Then 3 new things for Hallie that we got that we didn't have with George is the Nagel, I think is how you say it, baby sleep carrier nest thing, which is this, and it is the best thing ever. I love it. so much. You can carry it around the house. It's basically like a Moses basket but portable, and it's just brilliant, and you can extend it to make it even bigger for when they grow. Like, it's just great. It's so great, and I definitely think it's worth the money. And then also the Nigel baby carrier, which I don't know where that is. I don't think it's in here. It's downstairs, and it's like magnetic, and I bought it on an affiliate link that Caris put up on her stories, and I just... it's the best invention ever. It's a magnetic baby carrier, so you don't have any straps and like clips, and it's just so easy to put on, and literally like the easiest thing ever. And then the last one is the Doona car seat / stroller. Car seat with wheels. Mind blown. Absolute genius. And then before I let you guys go, my last question was, what is your main advice for new mums? And I have 3 things that I wrote down because I love this question so much, and I think there's so many bits of advice that I've received that are just amazing, and these are the best bits of advice that I have ever received in my life. Not just as a mum really, I think general life advice, but definitely applicable as a mum. The best bit of advice I've ever had is don't listen to other people's advice, because they don't know you, they don't know your baby, they don't know your experience, they don't know your life setup, they don't know what your thoughts going on inside your head. Like, they do not know. No one else knows as well as you do. Trust yourself. Don't care what people think. Like, don't care about what people think about your style of parenting. Do you, and trust yourself, trust your gut, and honestly, you'll do the best job. You'll do the best job. The second piece of advice is it's all a phase. Everything. Everything is a phase. The good and the bad. Everything is a phase. And then my third piece of advice is probably the most practical, and it is to breathe, count to 10, and get outside. Best advice ever. Sounds too simple to work, but trust me, it does. Nothing cannot be solved by a walk or getting outside or taking that breath, counting to 10 and starting again. Like, think of any situation, any really difficult situation you've been in as a parent, whether that's your baby's crying, maybe that's your toddler's having a tantrum, maybe that's just you're feeling really overwhelmed with the mess in the house and the noise and, you know, everything, all these like mundane things that come with parenting. Count to 10, realise that it's all a phase, or it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, and get outside, just go for a walk. If it's raining, take a brolly, put their wellies on, and let them splash in puddles, because what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to get muddy. Who cares? Like, just breathe and let it happen, and I promise you, you'll feel better. I'm not gonna lie, I don't always take all of this advice, but I certainly think it's still the best advice ever, and I need to take it, and we all do. We all need to just remind ourselves and each other of these kind of things, and hopefully we'll get there. Wow, I feel like I've spoken for ages, so I hope that was somewhat interesting. I hope that answered some of your questions. I hope you enjoyed that video. I really enjoyed like just catching up with you guys a little bit, and we'll definitely be catching up a bit more in like vlogs and things like that. I have no idea what my schedule is going to be looking like. Probably looking like 1 video a week rather than the 2 that I used to do. At some point I'd like to get back up to 2, but we'll just see how it goes, because yeah, it might just be a little bit tricky moving forward, but I am really looking forward to sharing a little bit more with you guys. But yeah, that's sort of a little roundup of our first 2 weeks, the challenges, the realities, but also some really like amazing, like I would not change. This is my life now, and I'm so grateful. It's hard, it's so rewarding though, and yeah, I'm just really looking forward to like the next stage in life as well. Like, I don't know if I've mentioned, I've definitely mentioned, but I don't know, I didn't mention in this video, but Ash is actually leaving the army. So yes, he's away, he's going to be working away until the end of August, and then from September he is going to be here, like at home every evening and not in the army, and it's just, I'm really looking forward to that stage in our lives. So yeah, we're not going to be a military family anymore. We're going to be a normal family, which I'm really looking forward to, and a family of 4, and it's just, I'm just really excited. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be hard until then. It's going to be hard after that. I'm sure it will be, but yeah, it kind of just feels like it's the next stage in life now. We moved house a year ago, we had our baby, we've renovated the kitchen downstairs, Ash is leaving the army, like, just, wow, like I can't believe it. But yeah, anyway, my camera's just about to die, which is pretty impressive considering I charged this before I started, which means I've been talking far too long. So I'm going to love you and leave you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!
'Cause you glue all the pieces back together. Yeah, you take all my wrongs and make them better. Yeah, you're making me wanna try forever. And I feel so free, oh my sweet baby.